The Pulse with Andy Blake, presented by Coca-Cola in association with BSP Life and supported by Fiji Link, Fiji Airways and Captain Cook Cruises Fiji.
If this will be your first time in the Delta or you haven't visited in a while, I've got the tour for you that showcases part of the essence that makes this place special when it comes to the Rewa province. From the historic Rewa River to the Naililili Rugby Grounds, all it takes is a ride in one of these colorful water taxis and some sunscreen. If you are looking to explore the historic Rewa River and its peripherals, then head to the Nasali landing in the Rewa province, which is about 15 minutes from Nausori town or a 10-minute car ride from the Nausori International Airport. At the landing, you can hire a colorful river taxi to sail you up and down the Rewa River to explore the rich vegetation, sight exotic bird life and visit the Naililili Catholic Parish, which holds a lot of history and memories in Fiji.
Tuna kena kau ira pa sol sol taki, tu ira pa kau takrati, sampai kana kaningunu, gora ngabudo serangat, tuna puno serangat sama indor makatungo. Iliu, ada sini kaliwa, pasang bulu, 5 bulu, kono sang bulu ko. Kono uzuno kono ko ike, lamo. Gai ntapu tu ke bisa batana, maka meser tu lagi. Iyo.
You can enjoy a 3-hour scenic river tour or tailor something to suit you by speaking to one of the friendly operators at the Nasali landing. Some of the more experienced water taxi operators can also take you to the river mouth, and if you are lucky enough, you might just spot hammerhead sharks that swim up the river to the estuary, which is said to be the largest in the world. The Rewa River is the longest and widest river in Fiji and is located on the island of Viti. The river originates in Tomanivi and flows southeast for 145 kilometers to Lau Bay near Suva and drains approximately 1/3 of Viti. The delta of the river is where several villages are situated and the river is crossed by the Rewa Bridge in Nausori. The locals tell me that this was one of the buildings that housed the French missionaries when they arrived in the year 1865 to build the first Catholic church that stood for 21 years before it got destroyed by floodwaters in the year 1887. Is the second Catholic church that was built in Rewa by the French missionaries and completed in the year 1901. Now the altar and the pulpit inside the church was received after the mass was conducted by the late Saint Pope John Paul in the year 1986. not know this, this here was where the first rugby ball was kicked by the French missionaries, thus beginning our crazy culture of rugby. Explore the historic Rewa River and its surroundings in one of the colorful and iconic Nasali Water Taxis. The Nasali landing is a stone throw away from the Nausori International Airport and can be part of your itinerary if you plan to enjoy a day in Nausori. Fiji Link operates up to 3 flights a day from Nandi International Airport, and for flight information visit www.fijiairways.com.
The Pulse with Andy Blake, presented by Coca-Cola in association with BSP Life and supported by Fiji Link, Fiji Airways and Captain Cook Cruises Fiji.
Bulavinaka, and welcome back to The Pulse. I trust you're having a great evening from whatever part of our beautiful country you're joining me from. Live on MyTV, across our MyTV Facebook page, including our viewers watching on our YouTube platform. Thank you for your company. Before the break, my Eat Stay Love profile on the Nasali Water Taxis and River Tour up the Rewa River and to Naililili in the Rewa province. Now for Homegrown and our profile on Kaivekau Kava with Lindy Simpson. Kaivekau Kava is owned and managed by Lindy Simpson, which she established in 2013. The business began with 4 contracted staff that worked on task-by-task basis and also employed up to 30 people from the local villages and church groups on a contract basis to undertake bigger tasks like the clearing of land, weeding and mass planting of cover crops. The business is based in the Vakondrobe province and about a 25-minute scenic drive outside of the Savu town centre, Fiji's hidden paradise.
I'm originally from Australia and we've been living here in Fiji, Savu for 13 years, so we call this our home. I've become a kava farmer. We had to give it a name at some point. The farm had gotten to a stage where we're like, all right, we have to give it a name. And one day Bart had come back down from the farm and we were going to enjoy a beer down on the beach. And we were laughing about what we're going to call the farm. And someone said, what about Kavalangi Kava? And I'm like, no, no. I said, but I like the KVK. I'm like, and then a barman came with our beers and he said, so Bart, he's like, he looked at his clothes all dirty and it was all sweaty and he said, Kaivekau. And I'm like, hey, that's a K word. What's Kaivekau mean? And then Bart's like, oh, that means like from the bush. I'm like, there you go, from the bush kava. So Kaivekau Kava was born. And then, yeah, we just kept on planting, kept on loving what we're doing, keep on having, our wins, and the dream just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Well, the inspiration for the setup of the business was finding a reason to stay here in using our own means, so being self-employed. The farm gave us that opportunity. We thought of many, many different businesses, but at the end of the day, we're just like, no. And then with the farm, we couldn't find a reason not to do it. And we had nothing to lose, you know what I mean? You can start small and that's it. Or, we just kept on planting. We got addicted to it. We loved it. All our staff around us, the people just came up, worked for us for a couple of days at a time at that stage, and everyone was getting a kick out of it. it's like, when can we come again? When can we come again? We're like, all right, let's do it again. And off we'd go camping up in the bush again, clearing another area. Then one day you look out behind you and you just go, wow, what happened to this big bush that was around us? And now you just see all these, landscapes of colour. It really is a dream. One challenge that we've had was finding the right piece of land to farm on. That was a big one. We had faith in some good people that we knew who gave us, the handshake deal to farm on their land, and we did the tambuas and we did all the ceremonies, the groceries and whatnot to be able to farm on, the land that was theirs to rightfully give. But, over the years, and as your farm becomes a bit more mature, the greed sort of gets in the way and people start whispering in their ears. And so we had 2 farms before this. They were much smaller in size, but essentially we did lose them to the villages and where that land was owned. A big thing that changed during COVID-19 was I really got into the vegetable farming, because I figured, hey, if boats were going to slow down and shipping, that we could be more self-sufficient, even more so than we already are. And so we started developing more parts of this land for vegetable farming and whatnot. It's something new to learn, and we had time on our hands. So that's been one really positive outcome of COVID-19, is to have all the homegrown vegetables, which now I'm supplying other people in town and resorts and whatnot. Whatever I pull out, they're all excited, because then I grow things that are a little bit different to what you normally see in the market, which you can't find, and they love. So I'm always challenging and learning. And then all the boys that work with us, they're like, hey, what's that? What do you do with it? How do you eat it? So there's always this learning. It's a fun journey for everybody. What supported me through was still having this creative outlet, still having a farm that's growing. That's just getting older day by day. So whatever work you're putting in now and whatever you can maintain right now is just there for another day. So what, we're not selling as much carver at the moment to pay those bills and to support those expenses, but it's still coming to you. That carver just gets bigger. It's not like a dalo, if you can't sell it and it's going to eventually rot in the ground. Carver just gets better with time. So having that security, or knowing that the farm is fine, we just have to keep maintaining, keep weeding, and eventually it would all turn around. The other thing that really gave me comfort and support was being self-sufficient. So living on the land, having our own solar power, having our own water, knowing that we grow our own food. We didn't have all those expenses. The boys who work with us, most of them live up on the farm or live here or nearby, and so we're all supporting each other. If I needed something, they were here to help, you know what I mean? And they would have done it for nothing as well. But I do the same for them. So I'm really supported by this whole community. We really got each other's back. I really love where I live and the people who live around us and the people we work with. Okay, accessing a product as an end product. Obviously, I get a lot of wholesalers and people who are interested from supermarket and whatnot. We have supplied lami kava and taki mai in bulk for green or for dried, in the past. Right now, we kind of scaled back, I guess, with COVID-19 and just, slowed things down. And we have a lot of local buyers who are coming, but I'm getting the inquiries all the time. But we can't feed that many markets, so we choose to just have 1 or 2 good customers who have worked with us, for a considerable amount of time, and we just look after them. I do have an export license. I just want to make sure that our priorities are the farm, and then slowly, given that I'm the only one running, the whole show here from farm to plate, the pounder cover, it will happen. We will start pounding and branding and doing all that soon. People who know me know that I've always got carver on hand, plenty of it. But yeah, I'm just not into the marketing and having it stocked in stores and waiting for payments of this, that. I like working with the wholesale market at the moment. It's quick, it's finished, it's done, and then I can just keep my time rather than stressing about all those little things and following up. So carver, who knows? I'm happy for someone else to take our carver and sell it as their brand, but because I know we've grown good stuff, that we've made it the traditional way. It's clean, it's it's casa free. You know what I mean? When you drink it, there's a solution to every problem. Sometimes you don't know those answers yourself. When I have a problem, I broadcast it to anyone who's around it, any listening ear, and I'm like, okay, because if I can't get it right in my own head, I put it out there. Somebody might just give you one little idea, which is only maybe the first stepping stone of the solution you're looking for, or that idea is completely off point, but it then inspires you, like, okay, that gave me an idea. And you get through every challenge, and we've had plenty of them. You just got to keep pushing. And if you believe in your business and you believe the model that you're working with, is right, that's it. I had faith. I had faith in what we're doing. I like what we do. I like how we do it. I like who I work with. And so when we come up with those issues, it's like, right, just got to push through. We'll just keep on pushing until we do it. We're hustlers. No, we're not. Whatever it takes is what we do.
This week in Culture Explained, I profile the Syria shipwreck on the Nasali Reef in Thailand. On March 13th in 1884, the 1,010-ton ship Syria departed Calcutta in India with 439 passengers and a crew of 47, destined for the then British colony of Fiji. Its passengers were recruited to work on established plantations scattered throughout the Fiji Islands, following on Governor Sir Arthur Gordon's recommendation that they were an economical alternative to Polynesian laborers. Launched in 1868, the 16-year-old grey and white sailing ship was the fifth in a fleet belonging to James Noose, one of the shipping companies contracted alongside British Indian Steam Navigation Company by the Fiji government. Like many Noose ships, Syria was designed and fitted for labor traffic and had been sailing to Trinidad and Nevis in the West Indies for some years before her maiden voyage to Fiji. Filled to capacity with passengers and sometimes animals, they would depart Calcutta, sail down across the Indian Ocean to the south of Australia, and then finally to Fiji. Syria's voyage was considerably pleasant, except for persistent seasickness and the death of 4 infants, 2 of the boys on board. A baby girl was born during the voyage. After 2 months of traversing the world's oceans, on Sunday, May 11th at about 9 a.m., the crew spotted the island of Kandavu. The ship was reportedly traveling at about 7 or 8 knots, and around 2:30 p.m. it was near Bulia Island on the eastern tip of Kandavu. By 5 p.m. the Syria had cleared the Astrolabe Reef and was on its way to Suva. There was no lighthouse at the time to guide ships approaching the rough Nasali Passage. This plus a strong gust pushed the Syria to the reef and struck it after 8 p.m. 59 lives was lost in this tragedy, and the remains of the wreck is still visible on the Nasali Reef, which is about 30 minutes outside of Nausori town in the Thailand province. Culture Explained and my profile on the Syria shipwreck in Nasali Reef, and earlier Homegrown with Lindy Simpson and Kaive Kaukava, that is based in Fiji's hidden paradise Sabsavu. Time for a short break. My talanoa'd with former Chief Justice of Fiji is next. We meet Mr. Anthony Gates. See you soon.
You feel it, I feel it, it's in the pulse. It's in the pulse. It's in the pulse.
The Pulse with Andy Blake, presented by Coca-Cola in association with BSP Life and supported by Fiji Link, Fiji Airways and Captain Cook Cruises Fiji.
Bula and welcome back to The Pulse. I trust you're enjoying the show this evening. Now, I'm extremely thrilled and honored to introduce you to my next guest tonight in my talanoa'd segment. I got the opportunity of meeting our former Chief Justice, Mr. Anthony Gates, during the Lau Discovery Cruise earlier this year when we navigated the beautiful Lau Islands with Captain Cook Cruises Fiji. And after a little convincing, I was able to sit down with a very interesting Mr. Gates, who talanoa'd with me about his incredible background and inspirational career. Take a look.
Well, I was born during World War II in the port of Liverpool in England, and at the time Liverpool was under bombing raids from the German aircraft. I came from a privileged background. I was educated at private schools, And I didn't really like school very much, apart from the last year when I perhaps was beginning to mature a bit more and to understand the system, and I could see some future. So I got my admission to Cambridge, and then somebody had visited school from London, and they were suggesting that young men in 17 or 18 should consider serving overseas as a cadet volunteer in an organization called Voluntary Service Overseas. And it sounded very exciting. He was talking about what they did in various parts of the now Commonwealth, but was then, in many ways, was still empire. And so I signed up for that, and I was sent to Sierra Leone in West Africa. And I was posted to a bush school. It was about 2.5 miles from the nearest town. If I wanted to go into town, I had to walk in and walk back. So that was 5 miles after school if I was going to go in. After that, I went back to England and went up to university. Cambridge is a lovely leafy place. It's beautiful surroundings, lovely buildings with a lot of history, and I was privileged to meet all these famous professors and lecturers and have education there. And also the university took special care. The classes of supervision in our colleges were very small, and they made sure that people didn't fall by the wayside. They got through their exams, and that they didn't have any worries about life, and they were encouraged. So that was a very nice time. Well, I read English literature to start with, part 1 of the Tripos, and then I got worried that what was I going to do? Who's going to employ me? So I decided to switch to law. I couldn't think of anything else to do. I couldn't add up, couldn't do mathematics, didn't understand science, physics, chemistry, etc. So I couldn't do accountancy. So I didn't know what else to do. And I thought maybe law would be all right. Well, I didn't decide to become the Chief Justice. I was asked whether in the extraordinary circumstances we found ourselves without a Chief Justice in the beginning of 2007, whether I would be prepared to allow my name to go forward. I didn't think this was going to be a popular move, not a good career move at the time, but somebody had to do it. So, perhaps being a bit reckless, I said I would do it. So that is what has happened. It's not for me to judge what I did subsequently, that's for others to review that. But I think it was important for Fiji to go forward with leadership and make an attempt to get on with reforms. Well, the way the courses are pursued, there are lectures which you can go to in your field, so you go to those. But we also had a supervision system. So I had a director of studies, and say you're doing 5 law subjects for a year, then you are assigned a supervisor for each of those 5 subjects. We used to go once a week to visit that supervisor. Sometimes it was just 1 or 2 people before him, or it might be 5 people in those small classes. And we would discuss matters that were, well, the law of evidence was quite difficult, and I found the supervisions very helpful in that field. So that's how it was done. So you were being prepared. You might have to write essays per week or do an assignment, and then they could see how well you were doing or were not doing. I like a lot of things about England and Scotland and Ireland. You hear this from expatriates who are living all their lives overseas. But there are so many things, as I said, when you look from outside to what is going on, there are some things you don't like. But there are other things that you really do value. And I think when you're outside, you value the things that you're missing more. So if I go on leave or have some spare time, then those are things I want to do in England, which I find so wonderful, and feel privileged that people do have those things. So going around the old castles and stately homes is fascinating history. It's such a wonderful idea that sometimes the member of the family, a descendant, is still living in an apartment in either the castle or the house, to make people who visit the house feel that the house is alive. It's got that contact with the past. And you know, when you're thinking about a family that's lived in a house for 500 years, it is something. And it's worked well. I think that governments have tried to keep them together rather than just regard it as some kind of social engineering where we must make sure we take everything off the rich. And then what would happen to these places? They would be soulless. I think even in Russia they tried to get some of the original families to go back to Russia, to inhabit those villages, to be part of the village. Because there is the continuity. Well, I've told you about the friendliness and the easy-going nature of people, some of the courtesies which have not been killed by modern society, those pleasantnesses and the respect. Something I learnt when I came from England in 1977 was no matter what political arguments were going on at that time, and there were many, and some of them are ferocious between the unions, the employers and the government, etc. But usually they sat down and they resolved them. Even things like boundary disputes for the constituencies, I was told how in the mid-70s, they resolved them all in the end. I mean, now I'm a private person to all intents and purposes. I'm almost fully retired, just sitting on the Supreme Court. That's my last job. But when I walk around somewhere, I find people who I have no idea who they are, who will say, "Oh, good morning, Mr. Gates, you know, how are you? Good to see you back," or something like that. Whether it's deserved or not is another matter, but it's a very friendly atmosphere. I came as a magistrate to places like Lakemba and Vanuatu, so I did see on those visits how beautiful parts of those islands were. And I liked seeing at Lakemba, possibly it was Wednesday, I'm not sure, village cricket being played. I had a feeling that was it Ratu Sir Edward Thakambau that introduced cricket to the islands, or? Ratumara. It was Ratumara. But it really took off and people were glued to it. And it reminded me of village cricket in England, which again, you know, it's not high level cricket, but it was great fun and everybody joined in, whether it was the local vicar or the squire at the manor house or the cobbler or the blacksmith. Everybody joined in. I think the countries I really worked in have been Sierra Leone as a teacher, Sri Lanka as a teacher, and Queensland as a prosecutor, both for the state prosecution service as well as the federal Commonwealth DPP's office. But and the remainder of the time has been Fiji. I have not worked in other countries which may have their own various problems. I suppose you could say it's unreal that someone who's drifted into law eventually has to carry out high office at the end of that period. I think I was fortunate to have a varied legal career in the sense that I've done defense work, prosecution work, sat as a magistrate, sat as a judge, and been involved in a lot of administration as Chief Justice. It has been very interesting, and I suppose most people would say it's a privilege. It is a privilege. And others would say, oh, you didn't deserve it. Well, one is inspired by people in history, by what they have done. if they're not mean-spirited. Wellington always said that he never gave enough praise, whereas Napoleon definitely did give enough praise. He rewarded the people who had done well for him. That is very important, I think, because in everything we do, we rely on people to support us. It's not all about us. It's always about the backroom boys who, as you know, you're the interviewer, but how many other people are putting together the program? You can't manage without them, and if they're efficient, do their job properly. So I take note of people who've been generous-hearted. Napoleon was definitely one. And one is inspired by people like Nelson Mandela, or even Anne Frank. Nelson, you know, some people think he committed suicide at the last Battle of Trafalgar, but he was extremely brave and heroic. And so I'm inspired by those people who are very thorough, they know their job, they have to work hard. I don't think people can just sail by in life. I think be ready to forgive and to move on, never sulk, and be prepared to say you're sorry. There's no harm in saying sorry. I think General Lee in the Civil War in America, once when he'd misunderstood the line of the enemy's positions, he sent a full frontal attack of infantry and they got decimated, and he went out on his horse to meet them as they came back in, and he said, you know, I'm sorry, men, I'm sorry, that was my fault, I made the mistake, come on in, you did well. Now for a general to go out and face his men and admit that he had made a mistake and he was wrong, that is very important, I think. Never be bitter. It'll burn you up if you are. Do not dwell on failures. We've all got failures, but there's nothing to be generated, nothing that's going to make you do better just to spend all your time thinking about your failures. Be prepared to face up to mistakes. I think just letting people get on with the improvements, because once you start to improve things, people will generally try to join in and help. They want things to be better. I like working with people who had got an idea, they came to me with something that wasn't working, and we worked on a new procedure, got that right, and put it into effect. And that's the way we did it thereafter. And as a result, we saved mistakes being made or abuses occurring. And you know, it's a small area, but that is useful. But as for being remembered by, I'm not sure, because probably people won't remember who put this into effect. That is not important. Do you remember who built which pyramid? Probably not. I think, yes, I think, but it's a vain hope. I don't have a Battle of Trafalgar that we won. I like to read books. I find a book is another friend, and it's always relaxing. When I went home at lunch, I was lucky enough to be able to go home because home was very close to work. I would maybe sleep for 10 minutes, but just before the sleep, I'd read a book for about 15 minutes. Then I have a nod off for 10 minutes, then go back to work. I found that was very restorative. But yes, reading a book, going out for a walk, fresh air. I'm not a mountain climber, but I like to go somewhere where it's very pleasant. Simple pleasures. I've been told to say this. I'm Anthony Gates, and I'm on the pulse with Andy Blake.
Former Chief Justice of Fiji, Mr. Anthony Gates, and our talanoa'd session at the Grand Pacific Hotel here in Suva. Minakavakalevu, Mr. Gates, for allowing me the opportunity to sit and interview you and for making time during your busy schedule. Grateful indeed. And that wraps the Pulse this week. I trust you enjoyed our show. My talanoa with Mr. Anthony Gates Eat, Stay, Love profile on the Nasali Water Taxis and Rewa River tour. Homegrown segment on Kaive Kaukava in Savu and Culture Explained on the Syria shipwreck in Nasilai. Next week is my last episode for the season, so make sure to tune in and watch before we take a seasonal break and return later on in the year. For comments and questions, send me a message via our Facebook page, The Pulse with Andy Blake. Remember to like the page and give this video a big thumbs up. You can also watch this episode again via our MyTV YouTube channel and our Eat, Stay, Love segments on board Fiji Airways in-flight entertainment. I look forward to your company again next week. For now, enjoy the rest of your evening and stay safe. Nisamo Demanda.
The Pulse with Andy Blake, presented by Coca-Cola in association with BSP Life and supported by Fiji Link, Fiji Airways and Captain Cook Cruises Fiji.